Today we're going to learn about variables and input. So you already know how to output. Now we're going to learn how to input. We're going to do that by writing a program that I have here. Now this is very similar to many programs that you're going to be doing for me. It gives you some directions and then a sample of the output. If I give you a sample of an output, try to make it as close to that output as possible. There's a few things you'll notice. This is called a prompt. Enter your first name, and then when it's underlined here, it means that I'm asking you to actually input. So I'm asking you to put a value in and use it later. So generally, anytime there's an underline, that's going to be a variable. Now there are other places to use variables, and we will be using them, and you'll see. But they want someone to enter their first name, their last name, and how old they are. You're going to create 3 variables with appropriate data types. Data type is a type of value. So is it a number? Is it a true or false? Is it a word? These are types of data. And numbers we actually break up into 2 different kinds of numbers. We have integers and decimal variables, which we call doubles. Okay, and output all 3. Create a constant value. Okay, we're also going to talk about a different kind of variable called a constant. Technically not a variable, but since we declare it very similarly. All right, so let's begin. To do this, I created this variable demo program. You may want to do this one after or while I'm doing it so that you can follow along. Okay, first thing we're going to do is declare a couple variables. Now, as you can see over here, we need a couple words and a number. Now, how old you are, that's a number, and it is an integer, so we're going to declare that as an integer. So, to declare a variable, you put its data type first. So I'm going to declare the age first because it's the easiest and it is of the primitive types. So an integer is a variable that is a positive or a negative whole number. There are no decimals involved. So I'll call it age. Now, this is how you declare a variable. You put the data type first, and then you give it a name, a space, and then a name. This is simply declaring it, and what it's doing is inside the computer, or inside the computer, there's a little spot called age where it's storing that value, or it's holding it in like a cup. Okay, only one value can be stored in a variable at a time. Once we assign a new value, that other value is gone. So this is declaring. Now when you're declaring a variable, you have to be careful. There's a few things that you have to watch out for when naming. When you're naming, you can only use letters, numbers, and, oh my goodness, and the underscore. So the underscore is this guy. Now, it must start with a letter or an underscore. It cannot start with a number. So when you're naming. Another criteria is it cannot be a reserved word. Cannot be a reserved word. And a reserved word is all those words that change color. Like if you made one void, it would have a problem because void is used for something else. So if you type in the name and it changes color from black, then you know you can't use it. Now, initializing a variable is giving it a starting value. So it's always in this way. Initializing it is giving it a value right away. And it's initializing starting beginning. So 0 is going into age. If I want to assign a value at some later time, so I can do age equals 24, or later when I have the person input it, this 0, like think of it as like a little cup holding that 0. That 0 is gone and 24 is put in its place, and 0 is completely forgotten. So age equals 24. This is the order it always has to be. It's the name equals, and whatever's over here gets stored in that value. Okay, so the next kind of variable that we're going to declare is a string. Now a string, I don't know if you can tell, a string is a capital letter here. An int is a lowercase. Now, int is a primitive type. And you can tell it's a primitive type because 1, it changes color. And 2, it starts with a lowercase. Anything that starts with an uppercase is not a primitive type. It's actually a class, but we'll discuss that later. So other primitive types that we have, and I'll just name them up here, we use doubles. A double, and that you would declare that right here. If I wanted to say make age a double, I'm 6.5 years old, 6.5, you could use doubles. So doubles are decimals, decimals, and booleans can be true or false. So booleans have literally true or false. Those are the only primitive types that we deal with. There's also things like longs, and we'll discuss that when we discuss the highest value you could actually store. So the reason that you have different data types is the amount of storage that it takes up in the computer. So it takes up less storage to store an integer than it does a double. So I'm going to store my int. My age is an int because it takes up less space. So that allows us to save space. So string, you declare it the same way you would any primitive type. It's a special kind of class. So we are going to call this first name, or just first, it's good, and last. Now notice what I'm doing here. This is one way, another way to declare a variable. If you have a bunch of variables and they must be of the same type, you can simply put a comma and list them out instead of writing string first, string last, like this, without this part here. Okay, you can do it like this, or like, ooh, hey, I just deleted. I should have copied. Don't look at that. So you can do it like that. Okay. So the last type of variable type thing we are going to talk about is a constant. So a constant is a variable, or a variable. We call it a variable just because it's given a name like first or last, whose value cannot change. So it can't change throughout the run of the program. I don't mean like you can't ever change it. Once I've written it down in my code, I can change it. Constants allow you to have variable names instead of words, instead of like values. So like pi is 3.14, let's say. Instead of 3.1415926 for pi, if I just call it pi, it's not only easier to read, it's a lot easier to type and edit. So the way that you declare a constant in Java is you use the word final. And then it's exactly the same as you would declare a variable. So if I want to create a final or a constant of type double, now it has to be a double because it's a decimal. And generally when we make constants, we make them all capital, so you realize it's a constant. So these things just make it easier to read programs. So if I write dog ears all in caps, I know somewhere that's declared and it's a value. Now, I don't have to technically give it a value right here, but the moment I give it a value, see, it doesn't really care if I compile it, but the moment I give it a value, okay. Oh my God, I'm going to keep myself. Excuse me. So I said 7.14. The moment I give it that value, it's still great. If I try to do it again, and I'm going to do it this way, if I try to actually like say, oh no, it's 8.22 years for every 1 year in dog years, variable might have already been assigned. So once I've given, as soon as I put this final here, once I've given it a value, I can't give it again. So you just have to be careful of that when you're doing this. Talk about user input. Now this right here is what we call a user prompt, and it's just telling the user what kind of input they want. So there's three things that you need when you have user input and when you want to have user input. The first thing is you have to import a package, And the package, so up at the top above the public class variable demo, whatever, you have to import this class, job, or this package. It's called the scanner package, and it's in the Java utility. So that's number one. You only have to do this once. The second thing you have to do, and you also have to do it once, is I like to do this right at the beginning, is you need to create an object of type scanner class. Now you don't know what that means right now, but you just have to write this exactly the way I'm writing it. Now you know you've done system out to output something. Now we're going to do a system in. So this is all going to be exactly the same, and again you only have to do this part once. This in is the only thing that can change. You can change it to anything you want. In the AP test they often use IO. I don't like capitals, so just in. Now scanner is not a primitive type, it's an object, so that's why this is a capital S here. So type this exactly this way. And the last thing that you need to do is you actually have to ask for the person for the input. So when I'm doing the input here, I need to store it in a variable. So if I want them to enter their first name, I put first equal. So it's an assignment statement. I'm giving it a value. Now I could just write Roger, but that would be silly because my name isn't Roger. So what you would do is you do whatever value you put here. So in my case I wrote in and then a dot. After that you type next here. This will allow you to have one word first name. Right, so next with parentheses is one word, no spaces allowed. If I put a line, and this is a typo in the notes that I gave you, this L should be a capital L. That will allow someone to input their name. Now, please note, I always use prints and not printlns when I do user prompts, and I'm going to show you why right now. When I run this, enter your first name. If I enter my first name here, I use print so it stays on the first line. I also want a space here, so there's a few things that I change. I do like a space right after the colon, and if, just so you realize, if I put a println, oh sorry, I forgot to close out of it. I didn't finish the program. So if this ever happens and you want to end the program early, just right click on here or do that handy keystroke and that will end it. So now enter your first name, and I hate this. I hate enter your first name and entering it on the next line. So if you want to be on my good graces, use prints, not printlns. Now we'll do the exact same thing for my last name. Another user prompt, next line, but we're going to input it to last name, or just last. Okay, and then finally, I want the person to enter their age. How did I have it written? Whatever. Your age. I forget what I wrote, but there it is. And the way that you change this is next int. If you're asking them for a double, this would be a double, the word double. It would be next double with a capital B, a D, like that. Okay? And this allows the person to enter two strings. This next line here allows you to have spaces in your name. So when you want pre-space fect, you need the spaces. This one is next int and also next double. Okay, so that's straightforward enough. All right, I gotcha. Sorry. Oh, duh. I forgot to change the variable name. Here we go. So age. These are good errors for you to see. I would edit them out, but it's good for you to see. So my name is Kirsten Barris, and my age is you wish. Okay, so that's the entire program. Now I have to take these values that are now stored in the variables and use them in an output. And also tell me how old I am in dog years. So I'm going to type that up and then show it to you. Be right back. Just want to remind you what this is supposed to look like. It's supposed to say wow and then a comma, then the first name, a space, the last name, period. You are how many dog years in dog years. So this is how it's supposed to say, how it's supposed to look. So every time, remember, you change an output, a type of output, you have to put that plus sign. So just keep that in mind when you're looking here. So I say wow, and I have to put a plus for first, a plus for last. You are, and I did the math, in dog years. Okay, so every time I changed from a variable or different variables, I have to put that plus sign. Now I made a couple of mistakes that irked me, and I'm going to show you what they are. So okay, first things, okay, Kirsten and Barris, there's no space here. So you'd have to figure out how to do that space, and there's no space there. So just so you realize when you're doing something like that, if I want a space between two variables, I have to just literally put a space in quotes, separated by plus signs. And if I want a space before the in dog years, I have to put a space. Now, one thing I want to be you to be aware of, when you're doing calculations, please avoid doing calculations. Now, this is a simple one, but avoid doing calculations in output, because one, you can never use it again. So once I have my age in dog years, I couldn't use it again. I would have to do the calculation, and that just takes up more computer memory. So you can declare a variable. So I'm going to declare one of type double and call it dog years or something. Now notice most of my variables always start with a lowercase letter. The only thing you ever start with an uppercase letter is your classes. Everything else should start with a lowercase, and every word starts with a capital letter, and that is called camel case, and it just allows you to read these easier. And I'm going to take this and put it here. Now when I do this, I really don't need the parentheses. Okay, I can just do my calculations. So notice I'm using dog years, and this is a lot easier to read than 7.14 would be. Now you are, so I just made this calculation, I assigned it, or I initialized it technically, into this variable. So I can now put dog years here, and the same thing will work out. Whatever, I won't back up. Okay, so I have my space here, and I have my space here, so that's good. Now there is a small glitch. Yeah, don't be mad, it's almost over. There is a small glitch. If I were to enter this thing first, and if I were to put this here instead, so if for some reason you enter a word, and then an integer, and then a word, or anything else, their problems occur. So if you have an input after this, watch, I'll show you if it doesn't work. Something never doesn't go wrong when I want it to, ever. So when I run this, I enter my age. I'm 67 now. It literally does not give me the option of putting my last name in, and it gets all weird. So when you have this is called the glitch in the scanner class. When you do have that glitch, it's a very simple way to fix it. So it'll happen, it won't happen. If it ever does happen, you literally just take this line right here without the assignment, without this, and just place it right where the glitch happens. So when right after I entered my name, there was a problem, so I just do that. And this will fix the glitch. Don't question it, just let it happen. It's just one of those things. Well, you can question it, but that's the easiest fix that we have. So now when I run this, oh, that's also that's also a mistake I will show you how to fix later. If someone puts in a word or a letter, but we have to actually just watch ourselves right now and put the right variable type in. Okay, so don't, if you do that, just run it again. So I'm 67, and now it will let me put my last name. I didn't ask you to do it in this order, but you will have to do assignments where you will have that problem, and I just fixed the glitch for you. All right, so I know it was long, and I'm really sorry, but you have 4 days. You can work it out. Try this out. Maybe type this program in, and then use it use it to play around with and to figure out variables and input. So your variables are things that have int or string or double, and you can declare them all at the top, or you can declare them throughout your program. Finals are constants that don't change throughout the run of your program. And calculation should be done inside here. Remember the 3 things that you need to import someone's input is this line, and then right here, this is the 3rd one where you need to have the actual input line. So each one of these 3 is an example of input lines, and try it out. Enjoy.